My name is Mike, and I always believed I had built a solid life, a life defined by hard work, honest effort, and a marriage that I thought was as strong as it could be. I lived in a quiet Midwestern town, worked at my auto repair shop every day, and came home to my wife, Melissa, whose dazzling smile and confident demeanor once filled our home with warmth and promise. But over time, subtle hints began to erode that promising facade, leaving behind a trail of signs that something was horribly wrong. At first, it was nothing more than a niggling doubt, an oddity in her behavior that I chose to dismiss. Melissa had always been a charismatic woman, a real firecracker, someone who knew how to work a room and command attention. But lately, she had taken on an air of arrogance that I hadn't seen before, almost as if she relished in upsetting the natural order of things. I noticed her spending long hours away from home, always insisting that she was busy with work or meeting friends, and I chalked it up to her ambitions. Yet, even in those early days, there was something off about the way she would casually brush off my questions with a smirk and a cheeky comment that left little room for discussion. One evening, after a particularly long day at the shop, I came home earlier than usual. I was looking forward to a quiet dinner with Melissa, maybe a movie, an ordinary night that I had grown accustomed to over the years. As I stepped through the door, I felt a shiver run down my spine, a premonition I couldn't shake. The house was unnervingly silent, and I noticed that the lights were dimmer than usual. Melissa wasn't in the kitchen preparing our customary meal, and instead, a strange tension seemed to lurk in every shadow. I walked slowly into the living room, my mind swirling with half-formed thoughts about the change in her habits. Then I heard it, a low murmur coming from the hallway leading to our private study. There, in a moment that would forever shatter the image of trust one held dear, I saw Melissa and someone I never expected in that intimate space. There, laughing softly with an ease that turned my blood cold, was my nephew, Jason. I froze. I couldn't believe my eyes. My nephew, someone I'd trusted and loved as family, was entangled in an embrace with my wife, and it wasn't just a fleeting gesture. Their closeness, their secretive smiles and hushed laughter confirmed something I had feared deep down. In that split second, every memory of our shared past, every promise once spoken with genuine love, fell apart like shattered glass at my feet. I had known Melissa was a confident, sometimes even brazen woman, but never had I imagined she could sink so low as to cross a line that should never be crossed. The hurt was compounded by the betrayal of someone within my own family, a betrayal that was raw, unexpected, and utterly devastating. Confusion, anger, and deep sadness took over in a rush that left me reeling. Even as I stood there, hidden in the shadows, my heart pounded with a mix of disbelief and sorrow. I began to search my memory for signs, any hint that might have prepared me for this outcome. I remembered the way she'd become increasingly dismissive of my concerns, the subtle glances she exchanged with Jason during family gatherings, and the way she seemed to relish every opportunity to hide details from me. Now every suppressed suspicion came crashing down on me in an avalanche of betrayal. I realized that not only had Melissa deceived me, but she had also exploited the trust of a family bond that I once thought unbreakable. In the days that followed that fateful evening, I found myself revisiting every moment leading up to the discovery. I rewatched old family videos, recalled every smile and conversation, all of which now took on a different, darker meaning. I became obsessed with every detail, replaying that evening over and over in my mind, trying to understand how a loving wife and a trusted nephew could be capable of such treachery. The shock was overwhelming, and the emotional turmoil threatened to consume me. It wasn't just the act of betrayal that pained me, it was the intricate web of lies that I now understood had been woven long before that night. Melissa had always been adept at playing the part, charming everyone with her sharp wit and spirited energy, but beneath that exterior, there lay a capacity for deceit that I never saw coming. In the midst of my inner chaos, I began to question everything about our relationship. Had I been too trusting? Too blinded by my own routine? Was there something in her actions, a detail or a word, that I'd overlooked in the comfort of our long-term familiarity? I couldn't reconcile the woman I thought I knew with the woman I had just seen. The pain wasn't just about the betrayal, it was about the realization that my entire understanding of love, trust, and family had been built on a foundation that was nothing more than an elaborate lie. I spent many sleepless nights trying to process the magnitude of my emotions. Each minute was a battle between the desire to confront the truth and the urge to protect myself from the devastating reality that it brought. I found solace in the quiet corners of our empty house, where every silent room echoed with memories of better times, a time when I believed nothing could tear apart the bonds of our family. But now, that trust was tainted, and the weight of the betrayal pressed down on me with a force I could hardly bear. As I sat at the kitchen table that night, I picked up the phone, my hand trembling as I dialed the number of my best friend, Tony. I needed someone who could understand the raw, unfiltered pain I was feeling, a friend who'd been there through the highs and lows of life. Tony's voice on the other end of the line was gentle, empathetic, and for the first time in hours, it helped me feel a little less alone in the face of such treachery. Still, no words could truly capture the storm raging inside me. That night marked the beginning of a journey of confronting the truth, no matter how excruciating it was, and of dealing with emotions that ranged from blistering anger to utter devastation. I knew that the road ahead would be littered with difficult confrontations, painful decisions, and a relentless process of self-reflection. However, even as I grappled with the enormity of Melissa's betrayal, her lies, her arrogance, and the shocking choice to involve someone I considered family, I vowed to myself that I would not let this break me entirely. I might be shattered, but I would eventually learn to pick up the pieces, even if the scars would last a lifetime. As I closed my eyes that night, I knew one thing for certain: nothing would ever be the same again. The trust, the love, and the very essence of what I believed a family to be had been irrevocably tarnished. And yet, within that shattering realization, I also found a spark of determination, a promise that I would not allow this betrayal to define the rest of my life. I would seek answers, confront the painful truths, and embark on a journey of healing that, in time, would help me rediscover my strength and self-worth. After that fateful night when I first caught sight of Melissa and Jason together, a cold dread seeped into every corner of my being. I couldn't shake the image of their intertwined bodies nor the sound of their hushed laughter echoing in my ears. For hours, I stood frozen in the doorway, struggling to process what I was witnessing, as if time itself had slowed to a halt. Every second stretched longer than the last, each one a painful reminder that everything I held sacred was unraveling before my eyes. In the days that followed, I found myself obsessively rethinking every detail leading up to that moment. I became consumed by the need to understand how I had been deceived by both the woman I loved and a member of my own family. My mind raced back to the many small, almost imperceptible signals, a dismissive tone when I asked about her long days, the way she'd avoid eye contact during family gatherings, and even that fleeting smile she'd exchanged with Jason that now took on a sinister meaning. I began to connect the dots, and every suppressed doubt turned into a resounding confirmation of betrayal. I remember one particular afternoon when I was in my workshop, tinkering on a car engine, my thoughts sporadically drifting back to that disturbing image. I couldn't focus on anything, the clamor of metal and tools was drowned out by the incessant questions in my head. What had I missed? Had she been hiding this secret all along? Every memory seemed tainted now with the acrid taste of dishonesty. Unable to keep my suspicions to myself, I started an all-consuming quest for proof. I scoured our home for any sign of secret meetings, a misplaced phone call record, a hidden text message, or even a casual remark overheard in passing. Late one night, when Melissa had supposedly gone out to meet a friend, I tiptoed into her private study. My heart pounded so fiercely I could barely breathe as I rummaged through her purse, my eyes darting across printed messages, social media notifications, and even a few photographs that hinted at clandestine interactions. Every piece of evidence I uncovered reinforced the cruel reality: this was no fleeting indiscretion, it was a calculated and ongoing betrayal. One particular message caught my attention. It was a series of texts exchanged between Melissa and Jason over several weeks. The tone, the innuendos, and even the timing of these messages, sent during family events and important gatherings, made it unmistakably clear that there was much more than what met the eye. I felt numb reading each word, as if every syllable was an assault on my very identity. The texts revealed plans for secret meetups, overly familiar language, and even coded references to escaping together when the chance arose. Each message was like a dagger, slowly piercing away the remnant of trust I'd once clung to. The discovery wasn't limited to digital traces. I started noticing physical signs that I had once dismissed as coincidences. Melissa would suddenly change her routine, staying out late without a valid explanation, returning home with an elusive perfume that wasn't ours, and even altering her appearance in subtle ways that screamed effort to impress someone else. At family dinners, I caught her glancing repeatedly at the door, as if expecting someone, and every time our eyes met, there was an unmistakable flicker of guilt in her gaze. All these details, when assembled together, painted a picture too damning to ignore. One particularly crushing moment occurred during a routine family reunion. I had always prided myself on maintaining close-knit bonds with my relatives, but that day, every casual interaction seemed charged with unspoken tension. I noticed Jason acting oddly subdued around me, avoiding direct conversation and hanging back from the usual group laughter. Melissa, on the other hand, was unusually animated, her laughter almost forced, her stories peppered with vague references and smug glances that made my skin crawl. The atmosphere was thick with something unspoken, and I felt as though everyone in the room was aware of a secret I was only beginning to comprehend. In a desperate attempt to collect my scattered thoughts, I even revisited old family photographs and video recordings. I scrutinized every detail, every gesture that might have hinted at some hidden dynamic between Melissa and Jason. The realization hit me with a force I wasn't prepared for: the foundation of my world was built on deception. Not only had my wife betrayed me, but she had also compromised the trust within my entire family. Every smile, every shared memory, now seemed overshadowed by the grim truth. The emotional toll of these discoveries was immense. I found myself battling a torrent of feelings, overwhelming anger, crushing sadness, and a deep sense of betrayal that left me questioning my own judgment. I felt like a marionette whose strings had been ruthlessly cut, left to fall apart in a whirlwind of despair. Every moment was accompanied by an inner monologue of how and why, as I tried to come to terms with the unimaginable. The shock of realizing that the woman I once adored, the woman I trusted implicitly, could willingly defy everything we had built together left me reeling. During this time, I began to withdraw from everything I once held dear. The shop where I spent my days became a refuge, a place to escape the chaos that had invaded my home and my heart. Yet, even amidst the familiar clinks of tools and the hum of machinery, my mind couldn't escape the images of that terrible night and the countless pages of damning evidence I had uncovered. I found myself lost in a labyrinth of memory and regret, where every turn led to another confrontation with the truth. In the silence of those long nights, as I sat alone with my thoughts, I began to understand that this wasn't just a case of mere infidelity. It was a complete and utter shattering of the illusion of trust, a breakdown of the bonds I had once taken for granted. Melissa's betrayal with my nephew wasn't a momentary lapse of judgment, it was a deliberate act, a series of choices made to undermine not only our marriage but also the very core of our family's unity. I recall an instance when I accidentally overheard a private conversation between Melissa and Jason. They spoke in hushed tones, their words laced with a familiarity and intimacy that could not be a coincidence. Every word they exchanged confirmed what my instincts had already screamed: there was a profound connection between them, one that went beyond the boundaries of what any husband or family member should ever experience. That conversation was the final blow, a moment when the last remnants of denial evaporated in the face of irrefutable evidence. Even though my heart ached with the weight of their betrayal, I couldn't deny that somewhere beneath the overwhelming pain, I felt a surge of determination. I needed to gather all the facts, to confront the situation head-on, and ultimately, to reclaim my life from the ruins of deception. I started documenting every detail, every overheard conversation, every suspicious behavior, and every piece of incriminating evidence, in a notebook that became my sole companion in those dark days. I vowed to myself that once I could no longer bear the silence, would confront Melissa and demand the truth, no matter the cost. That slow, inevitable shift from shock to a steely resolve marked the turning point in my journey. I realized that while the revelations were agonizing, they were also necessary. They stripped away the comforting lies, however painful the reality was, and forced me to confront the truth that I could no longer live in denial. The discovery of Melissa's secret life with Jason had shattered the carefully constructed image of our marriage, and now I was left with nothing but the raw, unvarnished truth, a truth that I knew would pave the way for the confrontation to come. In the following days, as I gathered my courage and continued to piece together the puzzle of her deception, I felt a mix of dread and grim determination. I knew that soon I would have to face her, to hear her explanations and excuses, and to finally put into words the storm of emotions that had been building inside me. It was clear that nothing could ever be the same again. The trust that had once defined my life was irrevocably broken, and the road ahead was shrouded in uncertainty and pain. Yet, even as I faced the bleak reality of betrayal, I clung to the hope that through this tumultuous journey, I would eventually find a way to rebuild, to rediscover who I truly was beyond the lies. Each piece of evidence, each painful memory, propelled me further down the path toward a confrontation that was as inevitable as it was necessary. I could no longer ignore the truth nor allow myself to remain a passive victim of Melissa and Jason's calculated deceit. This discovery was the catalyst for a transformation, a painful yet necessary step toward reclaiming my identity and setting a course for a future defined by honesty and self-respect. And so, with a heavy heart and a resolve hardening with every passing moment, I prepared myself for the confrontation that would change everything. I knew that the next step would be one of the most difficult in my life, but also the most crucial if I ever hoped to heal from the betrayal that now dominated every part of my existence. After days spent drowning in the bitter aftermath of my discoveries, days blurred together by sleepless nights and the relentless replay of that fateful image, I knew it was time. Time to confront Melissa, to force out the lies and hear the truth from her own lips, no matter how ugly or evasive it might be. I prepared myself mentally for a confrontation that I both dreaded and knew was necessary. I rehearsed what I might say over and over in my head, though deep down I suspected that nothing I could utter would ever soothe the raw agony coursing through me. I wanted answers, and I needed them now, answers that would finally end the torment of wondering how a woman who seemed so confident and charming on the surface could stoop so low. One rainy evening, when the world outside mirrored my internal storm, I found her in our dimly lit living room. Melissa was seated on our elegant, yet now morbidly ironic, sectional sofa, her posture relaxed in a way that suggested she was completely unruffled. As I stepped into the room, the familiar scent of her expensive perfume mingled with the tension in the air. The silence was almost louder than the steady patter of rain against the windowpanes. I cleared my throat, my voice betraying a barely contained mix of fury and sorrow. "Melissa, we need to talk," I said, my tone firm and resolute. She looked up at me casually, a slight smirk playing on her lips, as if she was about to launch into another well-practiced script to deflect the inevitable storm. "Mike, can't we just relax tonight?" "I'm just tired," she replied, her voice dripping with feigned nonchalance. But I wasn't having any of that dismissiveness, not tonight. I took a deep breath and continued, "I saw you, Melissa. I saw you with Jason. I saw the way you two acted, the secret smiles, the furtive touches. I know everything." The words tumbled out in a rush, each one laced with the bitter taste of betrayal and heartbreak. Her eyes widened for a split second, a flicker of something, maybe fear, maybe guilt, but then she quickly masked it with a haughty laugh. "Oh, Mike, you always jump to conclusions," she said with an air of condescension. "It was nothing, just a harmless fling. You're overreacting as always." I almost couldn't believe what I was hearing. Her light-hearted dismissal of such a monumental betrayal made my blood boil. A harmless fling? "Melissa, it wasn't harmless. I saw the way you looked at him. And you, of all people, should know better," I retorted, my voice trembling with anger as I struggled to contain the devastation within. She leaned forward, crossing her arms defiantly, the very picture of arrogance. "You have no idea what you're talking about, Mike. Jason and we were discussing some family business, that's all," she said coolly, her tone rehearsed to the point of cruelty. But I wasn't buying it. How could a conversation about anything be dressed up as passion, as infidelity, when I had seen every secret gesture, every glance that spoke of intimacy? "Family business?" I echoed incredulously. "Then why did you hide your phone from me? Why did you laugh at his jokes like nothing else mattered? And what about those texts I found, the ones that aren't exactly about business?" My voice cracked under the strain, each accusation a dagger to my already shattered heart. For a long, agonizing moment, Melissa said nothing. The silence that followed was filled with more meaning than any words could convey. Finally, she sighed, a deep, weary sound that barely carried any remorse. "Mike, you really are clueless sometimes," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper that was almost regretful yet laced with contempt. "I didn't expect you to understand, given how wrapped up you are in your little world." She paused, as though enjoying the moment of control. "Maybe you should have paid more attention." Every word hit me like a punch to the gut. How could she trivialize something as profound and painful as this? I felt the urge to shout, to demand her respect, but the weight of betrayal gave me pause. This was the moment where I had to decide whether to break under her manipulation or to stand tall in defiance. "Don't you dare talk to me like that," I said, my voice growing louder, echoing off the bare walls of our once happy home. "I trusted you, Melissa. I loved you. And this isn't a fluke or a one-time mistake. I saw it with my own eyes. You and Jason, you have been lying to me for too long." Her eyes hardened, and for the first time, I saw real anger behind that dismissive facade. "Oh, so now you're accusing me of things just because you can't handle the truth," she snapped, her tone turning defensive. "Maybe you should look at yourself, always so judgmental, never understanding the complexities of our lives." Her words were a stark reminder that she thrived on twisting things around, turning her infidelity into an excuse for her behavior. "You know what, Melissa? I'm tired of your lies," I continued, voice trembling with a mix of rage and pain. "I don't want your excuses anymore. I want the truth. I want to know how you could do this to me, how you could betray not only me, but our entire family, with someone I trusted, with my own nephew." My voice broke as I uttered those words, and I could see a fleeting moment of shock in her eyes, quickly replaced by that signature smirk of hers. "Family is always messy, Mike," she said dismissively, as if what she was doing was no more than a trivial misstep. "Maybe you should have realized that we're not living in a fairy tale, where everything is neat and perfect. Relationships evolve, and sometimes people find connections in unexpected places." Her tone suggested that she believed her behavior was justified by some grand, misunderstood philosophy about life. To me, it was nothing more than a betrayal of everything we ever built together. At this point, the conversation took on a life of its own, fueled by my increasing desperation to understand how the woman I loved could justify such actions and her dismissive arrogance in the face of my pain. I demanded, "Melissa, how can you say these things? How can you justify hurting me, ruining our family's unity, all because you felt some need to chase after your own selfish desires?" I struggled to control the tremor in my voice, aware that every word was another nail in the coffin of a marriage that once held so much promise. She looked at me for a moment, her eyes flitting away as if she couldn't bear to meet mine. "You never really listened to me, Mike," she said softly, almost pleadingly, as if that excuse could somehow absolve her of guilt. "I was lonely. I was tired of you being so absorbed in your work and never noticing me. I needed someone who understood me. And Jason, he made me feel alive in ways you never did." The venom in her voice was masked by a hint of sorrow, but I wasn't moved. Instead, every word solidified the magnitude of her betrayal. I slammed my hand against the coffee table, the sound echoing in the room as if to emphasize the finality of my decision. "You betrayed everything, our marriage, our family, and the trust one had in you," I roared, struggling to keep the tears at bay. "Your excuses are worthless, Melissa, because there's no excuse for turning to someone you're not even supposed to be with." My words were raw, unfiltered, and in that moment, I laid bare every shred of betrayal, every broken promise. For a long, disheartening moment, she remained silent, as if gathering the strength to launch another volley of lies. But I wouldn't let her. I continued, "I trusted you with my heart, and you betrayed it all by involving someone from our family, a person who was supposed to be a part of our lives, not our downfall." My voice softened slightly as the storm within me fought a losing battle against the grief that threatened to crush me entirely. I realized then that this confrontation wasn't just an explosion of anger, it was the painful release of a lifetime of suppressed hurt, disappointment, and love betrayed. Melissa finally spoke again, her words now tinged with a bitterness that made it clear she had long ago accepted her own version of twisted reality. "Maybe you're just not strong enough to handle the truth, Mike. Maybe if you were a bit more understanding, you'd see that I did what was necessary to feel alive." But her words, no matter how casually delivered, felt like daggers. I could see that beneath her arrogant veneer lay the remnants of a woman who had long since abandoned any pretense of genuine remorse. I'm done listening to your lies, I said quietly but firmly. I'm done defending a betrayal that has no justification. The trust we once shared, everything I believed in, lies in ruins because you chose selfish pleasure over our vows. I can't, and I won't, continue living a lie. My voice, though shaking, carried the weight of finality, and in that moment, I knew that no amount of words from her would undo the damage that had been done. As the conversation reached its painful crescendo, I felt a mixture of grief, anger, and a grim determination to reclaim what little remained of my dignity. The confrontation left me emotionally drained yet resolute in the fact that I would not allow Melissa's deceit to define my future. I had heard every excuse, every twisted justification, and I knew then that I was at the precipice of a decision that would forever change my life. Looking into her eyes one last time, I realized that the love I once thought we shared was irrevocably lost. There was no coming back from this level of betrayal. My heart ached with the knowledge that the woman before me, the woman who had once been my partner, had willingly chosen a path of deception, even if it meant shattering the sanctity of our family. With a heavy heart and a resolve that would carry me through the coming storm, I took a step back, silently vowing that I would seek the truth, hold on to what little dignity I had left, and rebuild my life, even if it meant starting over from the ashes of a love that had been destroyed by lies. After the confrontation, I plunged into a deep abyss of pain and loneliness. I spent sleepless nights, haunted by the terrible moment I saw Melissa with Jason. Every corner of our home reminded me of the happy past that had been suddenly shattered by lies and betrayal. Working in the garage offered a temporary escape, but thoughts of her betrayal never left me, even during moments of rest. I sought comfort in the support of friends, yet their words felt empty in the face of the overwhelming inner pain. Ultimately, in order to begin healing, I started keeping a journal, recording my feelings and observations. Although the wounds remained fresh, I understood that accepting the pain was necessary in order to move forward, step by step reclaiming my confidence and strength. Now, as I look back on the painful journey I've been through, I see that every moment of betrayal and heartbreak led me toward a hard-won truth: I deserve a life built on genuine trust and respect. The lessons learned from Melissa's deception were brutal but necessary. I learned that true strength lies in the courage to walk away, even when every part of you wants to hold on. In the months following my departure, I began to rebuild. I slowly discovered small joys, a quiet morning drive, reconnecting with old friends, and even picking up a hobby that reminded me of my once carefree youth. Therapy and honest conversations with those who cared for me helped mend the raw wounds, replacing bitterness with a cautious hope. I gradually regained my self-worth, understanding that while the scars of betrayal may never completely disappear, they can serve as reminders of survival and growth. Today, I stand as a testament to the fact that even in the darkest moments, there is room for new beginnings. I learned that it's crucial to trust your instincts, to never ignore the subtle signs, and to have the strength to leave behind anything that undermines your self-respect. My advice to anyone facing betrayal is simple: honor yourself enough to walk away, lean on those who truly care, and know that from the ashes of a shattered past, a stronger, more honest future can emerge.